Hi, Bob.
Hi, Abe.
How are you?
Well, to tell you the truth, I'm a little bored with my computer.
Well, you don't have to be anymore, now that KGNU is online.
Really?
Yes, news, programs, special events, and music are the only a key punch away on the web.
Oh, that's the internet thing the kids at school were talking about. How do I get there?
It's easy. Type www.kgnu.org.
Oh, that's easy. www.kgnu.org.
Yes, KGNU Online. See what you've been hearing.
Good afternoon and welcome to Antithesis.
Antithesis is a weekly radio soiree of stimulating commentary and entertaining conversation, discussing issues of importance in our daily lives.
Antithesis airs Sunday afternoon at 5:30.
I'm Richard Curtis.
I'm Leo Griep-Ruiz.
The opinions expressed on Antithesis are the opinions of the person speaking them.
And do not necessarily represent the views of the board, staff, or management of KGNU or of us here at Antithesis.
Because I might not agree with him.
And I might not agree with him.
Paper and greed. I ran into an old friend the other day, a friend who spent most of his working years doing recycling. Jack is a disciplined, committed, intelligent, and articulate environmentalist. In his current position, he directs the recycling efforts of a major state university, the largest such program in the country. So, I asked Jack how things were going. He told me, not well. After years of increasing collections and sustainable prices from industry, in the last few years, prices for recycled paper have been dropping. How could this be? I asked. Well, it turns out that the big paper companies that deal in recycled and virgin paper have been doing more of their business in virgin paper. You see, they're deforesting Siberia. For Jack, this situation is incredibly frustrating. After years of building consciousness on the campus of the need to collect recyclables, building a program with equipment, staff, and volunteers to do the collections, and finding markets to sell the collections, all of a sudden, events on the other side of the world could be threatening his program's financial viability. On a different note, I caught a news blurb recently that said satellite data from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration indicates that the growing season in the Northern Hemisphere is a full week longer this year than it was 10 years ago. Some scientists say that this is clear evidence of global warming. Other scientists say that, well, yes, there is warming, but it's probably the result of natural fluctuations that occur over the millennia. All the scientists agree that the average temperature of our home planet has gone up 1 degree Fahrenheit in the last 100 years. What they disagree about is the cause of this increase, and therefore the long-term effects of our relationship with the natural world. Some say we're doing fine, even if nature is going to flood coastal areas, what with glaciers melting more than usual because of the temperature increase. Other scientists say that the changes we're seeing now are the result of long-term damage, and that these changes are going to grow more extreme. I have to concede that the arguments made by the don't worry, be happy crowd could very well be correct. When they trot out the argument that since weather changes over thousands of years, it is impossible to know if the changes we're seeing now are the result of our poisoning the planet, or just the result of natural cycles. If the changes are natural, then there really isn't much we can do but brace ourselves. If the changes are the result of our actions, our conscious disregard for the interconnectedness of the natural world, then we may be committing suicide. However, the thing the Be Happy crowd ignores is the other side of the argument. It's impossible to know how severe the effects of pollution and deforestation will eventually be. And we are negligent for not taking seriously the possibility that these changes may in fact be caused by human activity. Even if that possibility is minute, the risk is substantial and could threaten the survival of humanity. It seems to me like this is something we ought to take seriously, in which case, At what point are we to seriously consider indicting the entire Republican Party on charges of conspiring to commit genocide in their intentional, coordinated, long-term plan to gut environmental protections in this country and across the planet? At what point should the military take action to destroy the headquarters of Mitsubishi to stop their genocidal quest to deforest Indonesia and the rest of the Pacific Islands? When will we see the CIA destabilizing Weyerhaeuser to prevent it from deforesting Siberia? What is the CIA doing these days to protect us anyway? They have the intelligence gathering capabilities. Perhaps they should infiltrate Georgia Pacific to see what it knows about plans to debilitate the Earth's ability to cleanse the atmosphere. Rivers and forests are the way that the Earth cleans itself. If we pollute the planet and destroy the natural mechanisms for dealing with this pollution, then we may be doing irreparable damage, at least from the point of view of human survival. Or, more significantly, perhaps the CIA could just destabilize Wall Street generally, bring down the entire self-centered, short-sighted, greedy, egotistical, cruel, and destructive economic system known as capitalism, and replace it with a human and nature-oriented system that will have the foresight to save this species and our ecosystem. The military and CIA are floundering for a purpose. Here it is: save humanity from greed. Besides, my friend Jack, not to mention the rest of us, needs someone to eliminate the competition from virgin paper mills.
Well, well, well. My. Yeah, what are you expecting the CIA to do that stuff? Come on, doesn't that stand for Capitalist Institute of Annihilation? Come on.
Oh, I guess so.
We have a guest with us today, Carolyn Johnson of the Citizens Coal Council. What do you think of greed? I mean, if it wasn't for greed, you wouldn't have a job.
That's probably correct.
Well, especially Carolyn.
I'm grateful. I guess I'm grateful for greed, aren't I?
I mean, it wasn't for those greedy suckers, like going out and destroying the surface of the earth in Appalachia and in Indiana, Illinois, all those places, not to even mention Black Mesa and what's going on there, digging up the coal and seriously messing with people's lives. What would you be doing?
I'd probably be on another set of issues, like timber cutting.
Oh, you wouldn't
timber
be
cutting.
burning a dumpster and chanting.
I don't think so.
That was a different show.
That is a different show, yes.
Well, alienation. Boy, oh boy, oh boy. Conspiracy to commit genocide. Come on, if we're going to go after somebody for conspiracy to commit genocide, what do you think of the whole dominating culture known as contemporary Euro supremacy? How's that for conspiracy?
Well, I want to go back to Richard's commentary. I was intrigued with the idea of using the CIA and the military for some useful purpose. But I have a fundamental question. Now, the military has kind of redeemed itself somewhat on their competence level, whether you agree with their goal or not, in their last several forays. And I don't think we necessarily would agree with their goal, but they're big peacekeeping missions to Bosnia, etc.
Yeah, it's kind of like getting rid of cockroaches in your kitchen with a couple of hand grenades.
Yeah, truly. But it does hell with the kitchen, but...
Cockroaches are gone.
Well, they come back. It doesn't get the eggs. That's the problem. It doesn't get the eggs, so they breed again. But I'm concerned about the CIA as the agents of greed eradication that you're proposing. Do you think they're competent to do it?
Oh.
I mean, they have just flubbed up everything. On such an important task, Richard, why would you turn such incompetence over to, taking care of Georgia Pacific, Weyerhaeuser? And, I kind of think the odds are on the other side.
They're obviously very competent people over at Weyerhaeuser.
Certainly more competent than
the CIA.
The CIA.
Yeah. But if you could raise the competence level of the CIA, would you see that as a first step in what to do on this issue? I mean, is that your plan, your program that you've outlined here?
I think tragically the whole thing's a little tongue-in-cheek, so...
Well, I
don't want to take it too far.
No. I was intrigued with it.
Yeah, and actually you mentioned, are we committing suicide? And I would raise the question about, is it suicide or murder? Because there's a lot of people, suicide is something that you choose to do to yourself, and there's a lot of people who are not really choosing. There was a time, for example, when people didn't think DDT was so bad. I remember being a kid, in El Salvador, and the cucarachas come out late at night, and when it's dark. And I remember being on a bed, a metal framed bed, and actually being able to feel this as the cucarachas were bumping into the foot of the bed. And
what size were these cucarachas?
These are these are Salvadoreño cucarachas. These are like subtropical cucarachas.
I mean, like
these
3 inches, or give us a little.
About inch and a half.
That's pretty sizable.
Inch and a half, yeah, roughly inch and a half, 2 inches, maybe.
I
big
saw
ones.
these 5-inch red ones in Africa.
No, these
very impressive.
These were like your typical cucarachas, and then I remember my aunt then coming in. I made some comment about they were keeping me awake, and my aunt came in and sprayed the DDT. Just came in with one of those el fleet, the one of those cans.
Hand pumping.
spray.
Yeah,
Hand
one of those.
pumps.
Yeah, one of those things you pump the handle, And I still distinctly remember the sweet smell of DDT. And people just thought it was what kills bugs. It doesn't kill people like that. Well, now we know better. So what was in fact a suicidal act, right? And if you use that stuff long term, it affects human beings. Well, even short term, it affects human beings. So what was in fact suicidal was not perceived as being suicidal. I think that in this case, we have to ask a question of, are we talking about suicide or are we talking about murder? Are we talking about a management elite, I'll call them, on this planet who know very well the effects of their activities and deciding that they just as soon kill off a bunch of people because there's too many people on the planet anyway, and most of the people that get wiped out as a result of these things are either, are poor and or people of color, so it doesn't really matter to them.
Well, it also is a very futuristic thing. The biggest effects happen down the road. They haven't even hit yet.
So
That's where you're getting into the greed situation that you were playing at.
Premeditated random
The
murder.
price is not to be paid yet, and it has not been fully paid on a lot of these things. The collection is still yet to come.
And so they feel that they can kill off.
But you're talking about pesticides like DDT, coal burning, which is the global warming, biggest contributor to global warming, timber cutting, which removes your oxygen as well as burning it.
So they're exacting a price on their own future generation.
But it does solve one question. I mean, it resolves. There's always been this debate: is man part of the ecosystem or something apart, humankind, or we're definitely part of it. We're causing it.
No, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Oh, it's absurd. Yeah, that whole thing of the environment being something outside of a human being ignores the fact that skin is a permeable membrane. It ignores the fact that what we think of as our gastrointestinal tract is actually contiguous with outside of our body. We're just tubes. Human beings are
Garbage in, garbage out.
Well, human beings. Yeah. Human beings are basically fancy tubes. Look at the core in a paper towel roll. Just think about the cardboard core of a roll of paper towels. Put a head on the top of it and legs on the bottom of it. Stick arms out of the side of it and twist it up a little bit, and that's basically what a human being is. So the environment is inside of us as well as being outside of us, and the outside is inside. And now I'm starting to sound like Alan Watts, so I got the whole tube idea from to begin with.
That's dangerous.
Yet.
No, that's why I think it's suicide. I think that in their arrogance, they don't take into account that they also will die.
Well, I look at it as murder because they are killing us.
Well, I think it's murder first because they're willing to commit murder. And the suicide is out of ignorance.
And it's premeditated, random murder.
So why not indict them?
Okay.
Why do you want to go back? To indict them? I presume you mean and take them some sort of legal process?
I
a
was
legal
just
indictment, or?
If you put them in jail, they can't run these operations. Or at least if you do it right. I know they have that problem with the guy in Chicago that keeps the
But our whole
gangsters
legal
running.
process is
Anyway,
set up
okay.
to protect.
Protect property, yeah.
Protect property and those that have the most of it. So
I
why would you
know.
throw back to that system? I think your CIA is.
Better idea.
If you can make them competent. Maybe
I-
bring in the FBI.
Well,
I'm worried even more about their competence.
are you?
Well, look at what they did with the lab.
fun is fun, and then we have to look at the real concrete issue of who is responsible for regulating these things. You know, who is responsible for seeing to the public safety? Who is responsible for seeing to it that these various corporations and all the rest of them don't kill the present and future generations? And here in Denver, we've got a great example at 1999 Broadway. We've got the Office of Surface Mining, which is supposed to regulate coal mining in such a way that the people in the area of the coal mine are not adversely affected, and that future generations as well are not adversely affected by coal mining activity. And with this, I'm going to toss the figurative microphone over to Carolyn Johnson. Tell me, Carolyn, about the Citizens Coal about the work of the Citizens Coal Council, your organization, and tell us about this regulatory agency who is supposed to see to it that the kind of suicide and murder that Richard has raised here as today's topic does not proceed unabated.
Well, I'll give you the Citizens Coal Council in a couple of sentences, maybe three, don't count, but Citizens Coal Council was formed and does work with and is made up of the members, people who live in the coal fields who are affected by coal mining. So it is a grassroots effort to get the laws enforced and to protect their quality of life as well as their property and communities and the environment. The Office of Surface Mining, which is the federal agency that's supposed to elect them, I think you mentioned that
What department do they come out of?
the Department of Interior.
Okay.
Bruce Babbitt's, who is now the secretary, his shop, as they like to say in Washington. And what we have is a regulatory agency, the strictest environmental law of all those that were passed in the, in the great surge of environmental legislation, Air, Water, Clean Air Act, Clean Air Water Act. We have the Coal Mining Act. And what we have is a regulatory agency that's become totally captive to the industry. And we have great law in the books. The writing is great. It was used for quite a while, and they protect the companies now. We have mines being permitted that in no way meet the most minimum of standards. And I think this is something that happens. It shows that where that corporate power really is. It is a law that was totally opposed by the industry, the coal mining industry at the time. It was done over their objections by a citizens movement, which is what we come out of at the Citizens Coal Council. But we have no enforcement. We have minimal enforcement, but usually none.
So we should indict Bruce Babbitt.
Oh, I think that's a fine
Babbitt.
idea.
That's someone else.
Babbitt. Yeah, Babbitt.
Yeah,
That's the subject of another show.
We want to cut off his connection with the coal mining industry, which is very similar, again, figuratively, to the relationship between the famous Ms. Babbitt and the object of her attention.
Gosh, I knew you were going to do that.
Sorry. I didn't do that on purpose. He did. I didn't.
I said it. I'll take responsibility for it. Again, let your imagination be your guide. No, but this addresses the futility. This addresses the futility of what you were suggesting, Richard, of having the CIA and the military be the ones to enforce these laws. Be the ones to actually go out and stop the murder and suicide that we're addressing. Here we got a great example of the law is on the books and the law is bad, man. SMACRA, the Service Mining Control and Restoration Act.
Reclamation
Act. It's bad, man. It should put them up against the wall and make them do the thing right. And instead, we have the gentleman whom Carolyn has referred to in the past as St. Bruce the Canoer at the head of this agency, which is nothing more than a shoehorn putting the large and I would say obnoxiously smelly foot of this industry right on top of people who live. Why don't they just live? Why don't they move out? Why don't they move out of the coal fields? Let's get back to that. Okay, let's assume we need all the electricity, man. Everybody needs all this stuff, man. I just bought a little electric espresso pot, man, at a yard sale for $8, right, yesterday. So now, why do people want to live in coal fields anyway?
They lived there before the coal was mined.
Well, why don't they just get up and move?
Well, a lot of them have been moved out forcible relocation. So I know that's an issue that
what's
you're
wrong with that?
with.
Everybody has to move. Well, I'm going to play devil's advocate again. So what? Everybody has to move. They build a freeway, eminent domain. Get out, move. What's wrong with that?
I think that is the classic, the majority taking advantage of the minority, but I don't think people even think about that. Saying that whatever you do has to be done, you have to get out of the way from my needs or wants, or I'm just ignoring what's happening to you.
I mean, the rich run the planet. What's wrong with that?
You're not doing a very good job with this devil's advocate thing, are you?
Well, no, that's the truth, right? I mean, listen.
Well, I think it's just totally socially irresponsible to treat other people as movable objects like that.
Speaking of which, this show is winding down its 13-week pilot run, and we might well be removed for something else. And folks, we would like we would like to ask you out there, if you're still listening, you obviously like the show. So please call up and tell the radio station if you would like to have Antithesis continue on the air. The phone number
what's
to call,
that number again?
the comment line is 447-9911. 447-9911. Call up and tell them. And again, we promise that we will not just have Richard and me in here. I mean, if we get stuck like we have a number of times in the past with nobody else here, but we want to have other people, Carolyn and other folks, come in particular women, because my attitude is it gets kind of tired listening to just, two dudes talk all the time.
And you could even call and suggest guests or topics, too.
That's
right.
true.
If you're going to call and comment, you can comment.
Yeah, that's true. 447-9911. Hey, I tell you what, they have comments get recorded. So if you want to make comments about the show, call up. Now, everybody's looking at me with this weird gleam. Oh, what kind of idea does he got now?
Oh, my.
Look, call 447-9911, 447-9911, and make comments about the show, about Antithesis. Say that this is for Antithesis, and go ahead, run at the mouth like we do, and entertaining fashion. You don't break none of them FCC regulations. We'll air your comment.
Well, they do that now, Tuesday morning.
I mean, we'll do it on the show, and then we'll go off on it.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Interactive radio.
Interactive radio.
I like the plan.
So let us know. Let us know. Oh no! Once again, Richard and I agreed with each other. We tried to avoid embarrassing moments like this.
I was really struck by how much you all agree. I think at heart you're clones.
Well, we have a couple.
It's a
of
CIA plot. They've supported cloning, I know, for at least 20 years.
Clones
the
in the
clone
name of
Leo made
agriculture.
me.
That's CIA
That's right.
clones in the name
Right.
of agriculture. Well, where are we going to go with this suicide and murder stuff? I mean, the idea of what do we do then? What do we do? Let's assume that we have people that are concerned. In fact,
Well, no, I think it's kind of a radical act just to say, hey, this is suicide. Nobody seems to say
Yeah,
that.
but you've got to go beyond the saying. You got to act
Well,
on it.
no, that's just, that's the start.
so we have Bruce Babbitt then playing the role of the Kevorkian of.
The planet.
I always kind of liked what Kevorkian did, so I...
Yeah, I mean, in terms of giving people the option, to shuffle off this mortal coil, I got no problems with that if people choose to do that.
Except there was no referendum to determine if we're all in favor of it.
So in this case,
so
people
that's
are being
the murder
well.
side.
If people, that's the murder part of it. So what are we going to do about it?
Well,
What can our listeners do about it?
Maybe they should
Where do
call
we
Bruce
begin?
and let him know what they think.
Okay, there's an idea. There's email out there too.
yes, Bruce is on email.
Oh. Well, no, obviously something much more profound needs to happen in society
Yeah.
to reorder our priorities.
Well, I think
it
you
has to
have to
happen
hold
sooner.
these people accountable, and they greatly resent all the attempts to do that, but that must be done, is holding them accountable, or you ship them out.
Well, I think that there's also the issue of holding ourselves accountable. I have frequent opportunity to speak before the public, and I will
You
frequently
mean
ask.
other than now?
Yeah. I'm talking about making speeches, being on panels, doing those kinds of things, and I have frequently asked people in the audience, how many of you? Let's do this right now. All of
Okay.
you listening, how many of
Raise your
you
hands.
out there really want to live in a world of social and economic justice?
Honk your horns. If you're in your
Right.
car, honk your horn.
You know,
Right.
and
I don't hear anything.
And then you've got your headphones on.
Oh.
Everybody will say that they're in favor of living in a world of economic justice. And then I will point out that I have lived in Mexico among the mass of the people at a popular level, you know, in little country towns and all of that. Mexico, in a global sense, is middle class.
Yeah.
Mexico represents the middle class of the planet.
Okay, but
And then I ask the audience, how many of you are willing to live at the standard of living of the average Mexican? And very, very few of those people who raise their hands in support of living in a world of social and economic justice are willing to raise their hands and say that they are willing to live at the standard of living of the average Mexican. And frankly, the United States is 8% of the world's population, using 40% of the world's resources. Now, that can't go on. That has to change. And if we're going to talk about living in a sustainable way, that means that we're going to have to change our standard of living, and that's going to have to change to something approximating the standard of living in Mexico, which is not that bad. But it certainly means that we're going to need to have some kind of changes. Transportation, modalities of transportation are going to have to change. The amount of resources that we use. I've lived in places where if you put an empty tin can on the road at 9 o'clock in the morning and you walk past that same spot later down that country road, by noon, that tin can has been picked up and somebody is going to use it for something. There's going to have to be some serious changes out there. It's crazy how many people, not just in Boulder, but all over this country, proclaim all of these wonderful ideals, but if you look at their life, it's indistinguishable from the most hard-shelled reactionary's lifestyle.
well, I'm going to come to a bit of a defense of some people there, Leo, because I think that it's extremely hard in this country for an individual to make all of those choices, particularly on, say, transportation. And if you're poor and trying to get to your job, the way things are laid out in this country, there is no way to get to a job without a car. And then you got to have gas for the car. We don't have a lot, and I think the Boulder-Denver area is a classic example of that. Unless you live on the main routes for the RTD buses, then you don't have a lot of choices for jobs and able to do that. So we need more than just individual actions. There has to be some organizing so that those changes are forced through for the society rather than just making it, you know, whether we choose to buy our espresso pots or not. And I'm not really concerned about espresso pots. You know, you bought an espresso pot, and there could be 200 million others sold in the next couple of weeks, and that's not what's going to run up the electricity. A lot of that electricity use are these, and those things that you were talking about are 8% of the people using 40%
of the world's resources, yeah.
a lot of that is industrial use, and it does not come down to individual consumers, but it is divided out to get to those numbers, and that's the sort of thing I'm talking about on the transportation. So unless there, and you could take any sector, I think, and do that. So you have to really get together and do some organizing and working with many people instead of just those individual choices.
So people, what you're
We
saying
can't
is
always blame the consumer, is what I'm saying.
society then is structured in such a way that people have a choice of either committing suicide or starving to death.
Right.
Well, that's a pretty dramatic way of putting it, but I
Right.
would agree that
I did that on
the
purpose.
point is that one has to engage in collective struggle, and if you spend all of your energy in individual struggle in order to live, you know, this non-impacting lifestyle, then you haven't accomplished anything because all you've changed is one individual consumer
Right.
who is a very small part of the problem. Where if your energy is put towards collective solutions, you're much likely to have an effect.
But if everybody just lit one little candle,
Yeah, wouldn't it be better if they all lit a big candle together?
of course. Well, here we are, folks. Once again, we have not done what we've promised to do, which is to disagree with each other. It sounds to me like, well, actually, we didn't get into...
We disagreed with you, Leo.
Yeah,
there
we
at the
did. We
end.
did just disagree with you.
Okay, good. So
Face it, Leo.
all
We
right.
disagreed with
But I
you.
had someone on
I
my
did-
side this time.
I did my part.
Thank-
Call 447-9911
That's the KGNU comment line,
and make a comment, please.
one way or another.
447-9911.
You've been listening to Antithesis.
44
7.
99.
1-1.
All right, anyway. Okay, Antithesis, 5:30 to 6 every Sunday on KGNU.
Well, every
Hold
Sunday
it.
for a while now. You got to call up, folks, and tell people that you want to have this around some more, because if
Yeah.
you don't, then we'll be gone.
Yeah, your message is don't clear cut Antithesis.
Ooh.
Don't relocate us.
Thanks for listening.
And stay tuned, because KGNU's always got stuff that you won't hear no place else. That's the reason it's here. It's one of the very few radio stations that actually lives up to the promise and potential of community radio. And what we want is the potential to get potentialer.